Hola chicos, este es el segundo video, the second video on the preterite tense. We're going to do a little review and then get into some new things. So this is the information that we've already seen. We talked about how the word tense is important, the differences between the present, the imperfect, and the preterite tense. Then we went into our endings. This is really important information that we memorize these endings. If you don't have them committed to memory yet, you should. Flashcards would certainly help. Also playing with them as much as possible, which we'll do in this screencast, will help as well. So these are our ARs here, and then we talked about our ER and IRs here, and we talked about the differences between them, and we're beginning to get these things memorized. So vamos a practicar un poquito. Now let's practice a little bit. And here you see something that we do in class commonly, and I'm just going to do 5 of these really quickly. We know that our dice refers to the verb tenses, so 1 is yo, 2 is tú, 3 is ele, usted, etc. You guys know that. And then we have a bunch of verbs here. I'm going to put it on no repeat, and I'm going to just choose a verb at random. Well, it's not letting me do no repeat, that's okay. I'm going to choose a verb at random, and I'm also going to choose a form, and I'd like you guys in your screencast notebooks for the first part of these notes to just write these down. So let's get started. So the dice is a 3, tres. So that's going to be él, ella, or usted. Let's do the ella form. So what is the ella form of the verb aprender? And if you just write ella, number 1, and then ella, and then the form there, that's all I'm looking for you to do. And I'm going to continue. You can pause this at any time. Our next verb is going to be the verb comer, and let's actually choose something else besides tres, which we already saw. Número dos, so the 2 form of the verb comer. How would you say you ate in Spanish? Número dos, that one. Let's try another one, number 3. And this is going to be in the ellos form, the verb hablar. I'd like you to write they spoke, número tres. And then we're going to try another one, número cuatro. Número cuatro, barrer is the verb that means to sweep, as in to sweep the floor. And let's take a different form besides the 2 that we already did. And we already did number 6 as well. We'll try one more. Número cinco, vosotros. So I want you guys to write vosotros, you all swept. And one more, un verbo más. And the last one is going to be the verb mandar. Mandar is to send, like to send a text message. That's fine. Let's do the 2 form of the verb mandar for number 5. Okay, so if you missed any of those, just go back and do them again, and you'll start off your screencast notes with 5 practice questions or 5 practice translations. All right, bien. Continuing, and again, if you need to go back and do the other part, feel free to do it. Stop this at any time. Let's talk about some other rules in the preterite tense. There's some other things we need to keep in mind. In the preterite tense, we do have stem changes. It's not like boot verbs, though, in the present tense. So we're just going to I'm going to introduce them. I don't plan on getting into details in this screencast. There are E to I stem changes in the preterite tense, and there are O to U stem changes in the preterite tense. These are the only type of stem changes that we see in the preterite tense. And the other thing is these only happen in IR verbs. So a couple examples, and again, I'm not going to go crazy here and give you guys them all, but one example of an E to I stem change verb is the verb pedir, which means to ask for or to order. And that's the E that's going to change. An example of an O to U stem change would be, for example, the verb dormir. And that's the O that's going to change. And again, these are only going to change to an I or a U. There's no other ending. And they're not boot verbs. These verbs actually only change in the 3rd person. So the only 2 forms of these verbs that change, this one would be pidió in the ele usted form, and this one would be pidieron in the ellos ellas ustedes form. So they only change in the 3rd person, singular and plural. So for dormir, it would be dormió, for she or he slept, and then it would be dormieron, for they slept. And here you see the U. So again, sort of a quick introduction to this so that when we get to it, it'll be a little faster. But again, there's only the IR verbs that change, and they're not these boot verbs. You're not going to see this situation where they change inside the boot. In fact, looking at this, they really only change in this form. 3rd person, singular and plural. These 2 forms here, 1, 2. Oops, 1, 2. That's better. Okay? Spell changes. We do have some spell changes in the preterite tense, verbs that change their spelling for a very logical reason. And for now, I'm just going to tell you that these verbs are going to be verbs that end in a CAR, verbs that end in a GAR, and verbs that end in a ZAR. Car, gar, zar verbs. There's actually quite a few of these verbs, so just some examples. The verb sacar, as in to get, like to get good grades. The verb llegar, as in to arrive. And the verb empezar, as in to begin or to start. There are many of these verbs that are going to do this. And we'll talk about what happens with these verbs a little bit later as we get into details, but there are some irregulars here. This is just to fill in that first sheet that you have so that you have this background information. And finally, this actually arrow should be attached. This is fine, how this arrow is attached to the stem changes. I to Y verbs. For now, I'm just going to tell you that verbs that have a verb like leer and a verb like caer, these verbs that have this AE and EE in them, if you go to the third person plural of these verbs, you're going to try to conjugate it, and you're going to come up with something like this. Leyeron or cayeron. And you have these three vowels in a row that sound really weird. Leyeron, cayeron. These are your Y verbs, and these ones are going to change. So leer, this is actually not going to be leyeron. It's not going to be cayeron. It's going to change to leyeron and cayeron. And these, much like the stem changes over here, are going to also change in the third person singular. So you're going to have leyó, and you're going to have cayó as well. And again, this is really just an introduction to this, but you are going to see these as we go through them. So bien, so this sort of finishes our intro to the preterite tense. Now we're going to get a little bit more specific on all these things that you've seen here and do a lot more practicing as well. Muy bien, muchas gracias por su atención y nos vemos en clase. Chao.